Hi, I'm Tristan Miller,
Billy Conahan.
and this is Positive and Negative, a podcast about the intersectionality between mental health and the arts.
Enjoy the ride.
Today on the program,
Yeah.
I had the pleasure of speaking with Dylan Emelianoff, who was my sister's fiance up until his death in June of 2021. So obviously this interview is a little different, looking back now. But I'm glad that I was able to share this time with him, and he was so open and generous about a fascinating life he led. And I hope that those that knew him can use this to remember him better. All right. Let's hear Dylan.
So, how long you been doing music? When did you start?
Forever. 14, 13. I had really bad bands in high school. When I went to college, I was in another bad punk band. And we played in New York. And through that, I ended up seeing other bands that were really good. And kind of took a creative influence from them. A lot of the crust punk bands in the Lower East Side at the time in Brooklyn. East Village bands. And then I ended up dropping out of music school to go hop freight trains around the world.
Sure. And what led to that decision?
I was actually, when I was in a big punk band and playing a lot of the shows, I wasn't allowed in the clubs, and a lot of the crusty punk kids would spare change outside the clubs to get into the show or just to spare change, and I ended up befriending them, and they were taken off, and they asked me if I wanted to come with.
Well, was that like a difficult decision? Did you think
I
about
wasn't
it for very
doing
long?
yeah, a day.
Yeah.
I mean, they were
Sure.
leaving. They were
Yeah.
taking off. And
course.
by that point, they had told me plenty of the stories of like hopping freight trains and traveling, and so I was pretty in awe. And I wasn't doing very good in school at that point. Like I was really getting my, I was not holding my 2.0 that I needed to keep. And I didn't want to miss an opportunity I knew I'd never probably get a chance to do again.
So where'd you end up going?
Everywhere. I mean, South
Yeah.
America.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, everywhere. I went across the continental U.S. a bunch of times, and then down to Mexico, Belize, stayed there for a while, went back up north, eventually down to Venezuela, and, all via hitchhiking or friends with cars. The Mexican punk scene's really awesome, and they really take care of people, so they just totally hooked us up all the way each time.
How long were you doing that for?
About 6 years.
Wow. Yeah. So what age were you when you started and stopped?
19 through 26.
Okay. So those are some pretty formative years, yeah?
Definitely.
Yeah. Was it hard to once you got back from doing that for so long, was it hard to find a job and settle
Yeah,
in?
absolutely. So I ended up joining a band, and then
Sure.
that band at the time had just signed to a pretty big label, and we would tour then for 6 months, 9 months out of the year, and
So a similar lifestyle then.
yep, kept traveling. Yep.
Yeah.
So, and that went on for 3 years, and I finally separated from them, and they would really not go on to get much bigger. But at our height, we were playing really big clubs to 1,000 people.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
And then I broke off and wanted to do my own thing.
Why punk music specifically?
Uh, it's free. It speaks of the politics that I kind of, uh, felt ide- the ideology was similar to me. The people, the scene. I finally was around people who got me,
Hmm.
and the openness, you know, for everything, to open to, all cultures, races. There was no homophobia. There was, that that wasn't acceptable.
Yeah.
Any kind of racism or homophobia was just unacceptable. So that was big. The freedom to do
Hmm.
whatever you want, artistically.
And so was that contrasted by where you were growing up? Like, were things different, and so you found a safe haven?
Yeah, yeah, but my friends accepted me, but still, I mean, I grew up in kind of a hip hop and hardcore culture, and yeah, that's kind of
Sure.
machismo, But I mean, they still accepted me for who I was and stuff like that, and I grew up around a lot of those guys, and um, they were cool with me. Um, I wasn't an outcast in there as that much.
Yeah. Sure, 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 sure. Um, what was it like? What year were what music school were you going to in New York, and what year?
Oh man, this is like the '90s,
Cool.
and Five Towns College.
Right on. How was the 90s New York? Like, it's cleaned up a fair amount. I'd love to
It
hear
was
a little bit.
so different. It was
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah,
Yeah, it was anarchy.
yeah.
St. Mark's Place was punk rock Disneyland,
Oh, I'm
you know,
sure.
and so I stayed a lot at C Squat when I was there. It was a very popular squat then and now. There was another place called Dos Blocos in the Glass House. Those are all squats. They had shows there.
When you say squats, can you define that a little bit?
Sure, it's a place that's been habited by people long enough to they live there for free, and they just kind
Hmm.
of in C Squat's case, they lived there long enough, and they made the place habitable.
Hmm.
They fixed the plumbing, the electricity, so that they legally own it now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, no one
Right
was
on.
taking care of it. It was a tenement.
Understood. So you were hanging out there in C squats, and what else is going on?
Well, I mean, there was also just the New York scene, hanging out in Tompkins Square Park. Uh, it was a really big traveler scene back then, so there was just endless amounts of people traveling coming through,
Hmm.
and you hung out with I hung out with those people, so I was really friends with them. I'd met them on the road. I also knew people from New York, so it was a good blend of both.
And I assume you would have been like really amped to go there as a young person, right? Did it
Yeah,
exceed or meet
well,
your
I was from
expectations?
Long Island, so that New York was always I was always gravitated to it.
Hmm.
And when I went to college, a year and a half early.
Hmm.
Uh, and so the second I got into college, I wanted to be in Manhattan.
Of course.
Like I wanted to be in the Lower East Side. I wanted to feel all of it. I took many, many weekends by myself, just roaming New York and just to see everything. And no, yeah.
Yeah. When you're growing up in that scene, I would imagine there's like a lot of like drug and alcohol abuse. Did you fall into any of
Oh,
that?
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
All of it.
Yeah.
Yep. Everyone did.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Everyone did. So of the 30 friends I had as a kid, I'd
Hmm.
say five are still alive.
Oh, wow. That's a lot.
Yeah,
How did, that's gotta weigh on you. How's
it
that feel?
does. It sucks.
Yeah.
Uh, the final hit went down about 2 years ago, and I lost like four from that crew.
Wow.
And but when I was about 26, 27, I'd say like 10 of them died around.
Wow.
That was hard. You know.
And that would have been around the same time you were stop hopping freight cars. Were
Right, and
those
I
two
was
things?
traveling and touring. I actually first started Sayu Drum around that time, so maybe like
Okay.
29, 30, and
Mm,
they knew of it and had heard that I had this weird gypsy punk band and had
mhm.
listened to it. But like I kind of kept my distance at that point because I knew they were going through some serious stuff, and yeah, and they ended up dying around that time too.
That's unfortunate. I'm sorry to hear that. How have you come in and out? Like, what's your journey with? Are you sober now? How do you operate?
Yeah,
And can you
you know,
talk a
I
little
mean,
bit about that?
yeah, I mean, for heroin and drugs, it's been 15 years.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah.
That's worth
Um,
noting.
yeah, yeah. Booze, I still drink occasionally, but
Okay,
it's not a normal thing.
yeah. What was the process like getting sober and staying sober for that long?
Um, well, you have to really, really want it. I'd gone to a bunch of detoxes, and rehabs and stuff like that, and finally, I had a stretch of time, clean and just determination.
Mhm.
You know.
Was there any particular moment that where you realized where you could make it stick?
Yeah, it was already, and I never had a big bright light. Just kind of
Hmm.
a dim one that got brighter.
Sure. Yeah.
And I never had an aha. It was just time had passed, and I could finally keep the days after one another, and then just life was really good after a while, and
Yeah.
you
Good.
didn't want to let it go, and you knew where you could go to let it go.
What led to the decision? Was it
Oh, I
all
blew everything up. Everything was in pieces. Yeah.
in what way?
Oh, my life, my family, my girlfriend. I had no place to go. Like it was
Hmm.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah. How did you, besides getting sober, how did you start to change your life once you'd made that decision? Like after, how did you recover from your life being blown up, as you said, as well?
Slowly, very
Yeah.
slowly. Yep, piece
Sure.
by
Sure.
piece. Yeah.
But
You buy a
like,
bicycle and you go to work on a bicycle. You take the bus. You get up enough money. You buy a car. You get this thing. You get that thing. And it builds up. And then 15 years later, you're in a recording studio.
right
It's
out.
like,
Yeah. How does that feel?
yeah. I mean, it's been a trip. It's been a
Yeah.
trip, and it took a long time, a lot of work, a lot of drive.
Do you still have the itch?
No, no,
No, not at all.
no,
Because you've
no. I
seen.
mean, it comes in weird forms sometimes in a dream, in the middle of nowhere,
Mm-hmm.
but nothing else.
Have you thought about why you started taking drugs during your process of getting sober, or do you think it was a kind of a peer situation that like everyone else was around you was doing it, or do you think there's something internal that?
That both, all of it. I
Okay.
was kind of a shitty kid. I was I was greedy.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, I was super nice. I was always a really good guy, kid. But I was greedy, and yeah, everyone else around me. That was pretty much it.
Okay.
All of it.
Okay. I would love to hear, if it's not too personal, what it's like going through like with detoxing and stuff like that.
Oh man, it's awful. It's the
Yeah.
worst. Yeah, it never ends. You feel like there's a million worms crawling through your body. Um, you can't stop moving. Your body's
Hmm.
shaking.
Hmm.
You're nauseous. Uh, you can't feel, but you can feel everything. Everything smells really fucking strong. Nothing tastes good. You're literally sick. And it's literally painful too. And you can't sleep. So you feel like that nonstop. So you finally collapse for maybe an hour, and then you just wake up an hour later and still feel awful. And that lasts for about 3 days, hardcore. Yeah, it's enough to like, yeah, make. I've heard of people jumping off bridges. I can understand why they would do that.
Hmm.
You want it to end.
Yeah.
Um, and but it's for some reason, if you can persevere through, finally after about 3 days, it starts to soften, but you don't feel good for at least 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a pretty
Yeah.
shitty feeling.
Do you think you have any like, oh, I don't know how exactly to put this. Like any baggage from all of that? Like not necessarily physically, but like emotionally, knowing that you
Yeah,
can. Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you?
Yeah. Um, I'm a kind of person now,
Mhm.
and there's no going back. And it's funny, but I can sense others. I can sense other ex-junkies from
Oh
across
yeah.
the room. And in conversation, doesn't take me less than a minute. And sometimes I don't even know that I'm doing it. I just something is there that it's not with other people.
Mhm.
There's a dark humor. There's a aloofness that like really it's not that bad because I've seen it so much fucking worse that
Mhm.
I'm completely unfazed by everything. And it's not like that I don't care about people. It's just that you really can get a lot shittier, and everything can. And so, and they usually tend to have like a darker sense of humor
Mhm.
um, and but there's a, a poetry involved too. There's a part of it that they can look at stuff with a little more care
Mhm.
about it because they also know how impermanent it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I would imagine that it's kind of similar to being through like a near death experience as well,
Yeah,
because in a way it
yeah,
is.
yeah.
Um, I think there's also a very similar thing with like people who have various like mental issues or whatever you want to call it. I've noticed I can always tell when someone has a lot of anxiety or they're hyperactive. I immediately
Mhm.
can sniff it out, and I think
Mhm.
that's something that happens a lot more than people think, and it dictates who you gravitate towards in a way that I don't think a lot of people realize. Um,
Right. I mean, and it's fine. So, some of the people who died,
mhm,
um, I would meet them later on after they had gone through and cleaned up,
mhm,
and
mhm,
and I gravitated to them, and I would find out later on that, oh yeah, they're an ex-junkie, and
mhm,
um, and in some cases they went back out, and that's how they died,
mhm.
and um, so you start to look at yourself like, fuck, man, I'm always just going to be gravitating to these kind of fucking people, and they're going to kind of keep on dying on me, like fuck,
Yeah,
and that can do a number on you too,
of
for
course.
real.
Um, how many times, if you don't mind me asking, how many times did you attempt to get sober before it stuck?
5, 6,
Yeah.
yeah,
Did you think every time that this was the one?
no,
No.
no. I think the last couple of times I did, and and they lasted for a while.
Hmm.
I think the other times I was just trying to make everyone else happy,
Okay.
and self-preservation kicked in too. I was like, this is bad, this is wrong, I'm gonna die, and I don't want to, and and so it would last like 3 or 4 months, maybe a year, and then off you go.
Hmm. 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 Do you feel like you're a better musician now that you're sober?
Oh yeah, hell yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
1,000 times better.
Yeah. Um, I'd like to hear a little bit more about your process as a musician and like how you write songs and you write and you play guitar, right?
Yeah, I play all the instruments, but the guitar is my mainstay.
Okay. And how do you go about writing a song?
So I use all processes. No, there's nothing I won't use. Usually, it can be either. I can write. So I write a poem,
Hmm.
and I like it, and sometimes I'll put it to music. Other times I write music, and I can hear the melody in my head, and I can hear the words, and they come out, and I write a poem. Um,
Hmm.
for me, poetry and lyrics are one and the same thing, you know. And so I'm very, very um, retentive about how perfect each word is, and
Hmm.
I won't sing anything. I don't 1,000% believe that every word is where it should be, and every line is exactly as it should be. And so,
Hmm.
if you can imagine, I have like 15 finish songs,
Of course.
at,
Yeah,
at
yeah,
all
yeah.
times, because they're just lingering there waiting to be finished, because I will not sing them until they're perfect. And
Hmm.
every word is exactly what I want it to be. And I'm not forcing it, and I'm not rushing it. And, so there's songs definitely, the ones I guess I'm more proud of that took 3 years,
Hmm.
and I had to just keep on putting it down and pick it up later and listen to it and go through it. And okay, this is it. And almost all of them come from a poem
Hmm.
of some sort. But there's nothing that like there's no fundamental thing that I do. It'll just kind of come to me. I'll be driving in the car, and just nowadays I use my phone, but back in the day
Hmm.
I wrote on while I was driving on a steering wheel,
Yeah.
and it's like I know I have to put it down because it won't come again.
Yeah. Yeah. I absolutely understand. I feel like, as someone who does comedy, like there's a parallel there, like joke writing. You are so meticulous over it, and you have
I
no
bet.
idea, and you have to have like a way to notate it down because you don't know if you're going to remember it later.
Yeah, I can only
Um,
imagine.
yeah, I would love to hear more about what it was like, going across the countries, on the freight train, because that's not something a lot of people do, and I think a lot of people would
No.
love to hear a bit about it.
Yeah. So you know, I'm not giving any secrets away. So there's a crew change guide, and it's literally that. It's passed on from one hobo to another. You can't find it online, and as it should be. And once you've got some time and you've met the right people, you can get a crew change guide, and that really will help out. Or you find a crew to go with. Some people who already have hopped the rails and they know times, places, and stuff like that. It's all been. It's all a giant algorithm, a mathematical algorithm. That train is leaving at 6:06 and it's arriving at 5:19. Not a
Hmm.
minute later, not a minute earlier. And so when you hop freight trains as opposed to like hitchhiking, you might get there faster hitchhiking, but you're definitely going to get there on a train at that
Hmm.
time. Um, there's many different kinds of cars and stuff like that. You don't really hop box cars. I mean, you can, but I prefer not to. You have to spike the door. Those doors can shut and lock, locking you
Hmm.
in them. I've
Hmm.
heard of people dying like that. They suffocated. Um, Grainers are much better. It's kind of hard to explain why. You can get 48s. They're 48 feet long because that's what the cargo fits inside is. And the cargo is actually 40 feet long, and it leaves a 4-foot gap on each side, and that has a platform.
Hmm.
And on that platform is a great place to sit down.
Hmm.
And sometimes they stack a bigger crate on top of it, so you actually have a roof over your head too.
I
And
see.
so there's many different long lines too. There's a high line that goes from pretty much Jersey to Oakland, and it
Wow.
goes through all the states, including Minnesota. And the
Hmm.
yard is up in Fridley, which is just a suburb of Minneapolis and stuff. And um, I'd met a lot of Minneapolis people, strangely enough, on the road. So I had actually wanted to come up here, and I had made it up here for May Day. And when I arrived, there was no kidding, like 1,000 travelers and crusty punks hanging out. And I was like, wow, this is awesome, and I got to come back here, and, then going up, you're in the middle of nowhere. There's no orange in the sky because you're so far from civilization. The glow of a
Hmm.
city doesn't show through. Um, there's some really beautiful places to go, up the western coast, up to like Vancouver and stuff like that. It's amazingly beautiful, and
Hmm.
it's like they built the rail just so you could see all this cool shit. Only like that like there's not many people in the world who get the view that you're getting. Um, and it's adventure. It's the
Hmm.
last great American adventure. And every if you're going from like San Antonio to Austin, and you get into Austin Yard, the train doesn't stop. What happens is there's a bridge over the river by there, and when you hit the bridge, you can see downtown, and you have to kind of get ready to get off. and right past that bridge is a turn, and the train's got to slow down to like 10 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you do is you kind of get ready and you get on the rungs of the side of the car, and you wait for that bridge to get going, and you get ready to go, and then once you see land, let go, and you're going to be running in like 6-foot strides, and probably crash and eat shit, but that's the best way to get off at that spot. And that's the knowledge that is passed on from one person to another is, hey, when you get there, this is how you get through this part.
Yeah.
And and so many places are like that. Anywhere from like the BART station in San Francisco to the post office, and there's a one block down there's a hole in the fence, and that's how you go through. Track number 4 goes west, track number 9 goes, because these things have like literally hundreds of tracks, so you have to know where each one goes, and the crew change guy or someone who's been there be like, oh, it's track number 4 is west, track number 9 is north, and yada yada yada, and then ducking the bulls and stuff, which are the railroad police, and depending on the line that you ride, is how much jail time you're going to get. So I think Southern Pacific, no, Santa Fe is 90 days if they catch you. Whereas I think Southern Pacific, there's like, they're just going to kick you off. Like, get out of here, kid.
Yeah. You ever sat in a cell for 90 days?
No, I haven't. I haven't done that much time. I did a couple weeks once.
Yeah,
but not for hopping trains. I got caught hopping trains, but the guy just kicked us off the train.
Okay. Do you find, because you've had this life where you're moving around a lot, do you find now that you're not really doing that, do you feel restless?
I did for a very long time, and I kept on moving. So, when I stopped and left that band, the bigger band, Apocalypse Theater, that I was in, I moved to the East Coast and moved to New York, and then I couldn't stay anywhere for longer than 6 months. So I moved from New York to Saratoga Springs. I was there maybe for like 8 months, and that's where really the Sire Drum kind of got its members and stuff. And then we moved to Burlington and picked up a few more members, and then I stayed there for about a year. And then moved back to New York. And no, I was actually there for longer than a year. I was almost there for 2 years at that point, but I was like 32, 33. And but even in that town, I moved. When I first got there, opened a recording studio, and I did really well, recording a lot of bands and stuff. But like, I was doing it too much, and I wanted to play music. And so I moved into one of the punk houses that was closer to downtown Burlington, and operated out of there, and Sire Drum got pretty popular, and we started playing around the East Coast and stuff, in New York, Boston, and then my studio got flooded, and
oh no,
I lost the mixes and masters to a bunch of people's albums and stuff, and not to mention the equipment. And at that point, I kind of threw my hands up and was just kind of like, you know what? I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done trying. I'm going to go get a career or something. And so I stopped, and I worked on a novel for about 2 years while getting to move back to Minneapolis to be with my kid, with my ex, and then did that and worked on the novel while here, and just I had management experience and stuff like that. So I just kind of got pushed up the hierarchy and work, and then finally at the same time I was building a recording studio again, and the itch was there. I just couldn't stop writing music, and as much as I wanted to, and kind of wanted to leave the whole thing and not be part of it anymore, because I was like, this is an endless sinkhole of money and time. And but it's still writing, and I just couldn't help it. And so I had a bunch of songs that our whole album was destroyed in that flood, so I had to piece together of what I had. And there was members there on that album that I just really wanted them on the next album, and so I was able to take part of the computer to the FBI, and they were able actually to pull out some of the files.
Wow.
And so, you know, the first album we have, In Other Words, is probably 30 musicians on it, and that was from those files that I was able to get.
Wow.
And they weren't the best versions, but I really wanted that person because, you know, they were in the band and they were playing and they'd given me so much.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, so some of them weren't the best recordings, and I had to work with what I had to work with. But I remastered them and then pulled them out and then played on top of them with a whole new group of people and released that under that guise. And, you know, with, some of those people are in the lineup now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you know, it was you know, my lifetime's work, but after being put through the ringer.
Yeah.
You know.
What made you want to write a novel other than like not wanting to write music anymore? Why a novel specifically?
I'm a voracious reader.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I read a lot, and everyone was like, "Oh, you're gonna write a biography?" And I was like, "No." I wrote like a hard science space opera.
Oh, that's fun. That's very cool.
You know,
Are you gonna self-publish it? Have you self-published it? Have you published it with a publisher?
I stopped writing halfway through, so I'm at 600 pages. It's a big.
Oh wow.
It's a big novel, and I kind of ran out of time. I hit a stump. I hit a writer's block. I couldn't make my middle work. I was having a hard time, and my ending was iffy. So I was struggling with that, and I just kind of put it down and didn't. I picked it up a couple of times and have done some edits and stuff like that, and like cut out a ton. But yeah, I kind of need to go back to it at some point.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's up to you. No pressure here. Sounds interesting though. Is it hard having a kid that you don't like to share custody with?
Oh, I do. Oh,
yeah.
I see him. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But like, is it hard to find balance with that? Is what I mean to say.
Yeah, you know, but honestly, his mom is really cool, and she can be hard, but she's you know, she's been around artists her whole life. She's a counselor. She works with you know, urban youth.
Okay.
She's a really good mom. She's always been a mom. She was a mom when she was 4.
Yeah.
And she was always the queen. You know, she was in that band. She was the lead singer of the band that I was in that had gotten pretty popular. And so, but when we were going to have a kid and everything like that, like she just jumped right into gear and just knew how to do everything. And it was just pretty much just like, you know, just give her money and do what she says, and everything should work out pretty good. You know, and it has. I mean, he's you know, he's a talented, smart little dude.
Yeah. How old is he, may I ask?
Oh, there's 2. There's Basil was from a former girlfriend who I don't see as much, but we do talk. And then there's Elias, who's 15, and yeah, I see him all the time.
Either of them starting playing the music?
No.
Not at all.
They want nothing to do with it.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah. They you know, they both were raised in these music artists communes. We had always had 3 or 4 roommates. Usually they were in the band with us, and we always had artist friends over, and we always had musicians over. You know, you could definitely say 3 nights a week, you know, it was too loud to watch TV because somebody was practicing downstairs. You know, so that was, you know, I could see that being the reason to like, yeah, I don't want anything to do with that ever in my life. You know?
Sure. We're talking a little bit about how you were restless at the beginning. Was there anything that you actively did to try to dissuade that, or did it just go away in time?
Time. Just working, time, trying to be normal.
Is that the goal?
Normal stuff. Yeah, kind of. I mean, I wanted to provide that for my ex and my kid. You know, I
Yeah.
wanted to have this normal salary job thing, which, you know,
Hmm.
I did eventually, but just, you know, I also played music too, and,
Yeah.
you know, you know, and I do have that now.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, you know, having some kind of normal structure is nice.
Yeah. And I assume that also helps with the sobriety too, that things aren't
Yep.
so chaotic.
Yep.
Yeah. Um, what would your biggest piece of advice to someone who's trying to get sober be?
Uh, Run and hide if you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, hide somewhere. Get away. Just need a little bit of time.
Uh-huh. What about someone who's trying to stay sober?
You can still hide. No, just kidding. I mean, like, there isn't anything. You know,
Yeah.
there's no magic trick. You know, do what you can. Uh, there's no one answer. You know, like take AA for instance. What is it? 15%? That's a
Yeah.
terrible figure.
Yeah.
That's a terrible figure. You know,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be walking around with any pride on my shoulder to say something. You know, uh, there's a lot of antihistamines. There's a lot of new science going out there. You know, where you can take things that'll help. You know,
Hmm.
there's active drugs that you can take that you can't smoke crack. It doesn't matter how much crack you smoke, nothing's going to happen.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
same thing for alcohol. There's even a one that you can take it and you can enjoy the first drink. You're just not going to enjoy the second,
Oh.
which is really awesome.
Yeah.
And that doctors aren't prescribing this shit, is beyond me. But you know, people can look it up for themselves.
Yeah. Um, you mentioned you drink from time to time. Are you ever concerned? Do you ever get anxious about that?
No, I'm super careful
Why is that the exception?
because I made it. So
Okay. So going back to the ride and the rail thing, because I honestly that's absolutely fascinating. I'm sorry if you're getting bored about talking about it. Um, but there's this whole like mystique surrounding people who do that. Like, and there's like symbols and signs. Can you confirm or deny that, or it
oh
can't?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, see if you got a triangle with two arms pointing out and then three fingers off those two arms. That means Manwood Glen lives here.
Mhm.
The international squat sign is an N with an arrow pointed up,
Mm.
and you put that in the window of the squat you're squatting. Uh,
Mhm.
you know, there's a bunch of hobo tags. You know, there's the FTRA, which is the Freight Train Riders of America,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
they're a bunch of pretty much bandits. Honestly, you know, they rob freight trains and they hang out in gangs. They're a bunch of rednecks, honestly. You know, kind of
Yeah.
like bikers but on freight trains. Um, I, you know, I avoided them.
Yeah.
You know, as much as possible.
I mean that
Um,
makes sense. Yeah.
yeah, you know, I mean, freight train yards are usually located also in like the worst part of town. Like, so you have to be a little cautious
Mhm.
going to and getting out of and stuff like that. And you know, it's not always the case, but you know, there's a lot of times, you know, it's pretty far out there, and um, it's in a pretty lousy neighborhood, and you
Mhm.
know, you're sitting in a yard waiting for the train for a while, you know, and
Mhm.
it can be dicey.
Yeah. As a father, are you concerned that any of your predispositions are genetic?
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah,
How
it
do you
worries.
go ahead?
We talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we openly talk about it. His mom talked to him about it. I talked to him about it.
Mhm.
You know, absolutely.
Mhm. Do you think it comes from genetics on your end too?
Oh, it definitely does. Yes.
Oh
My
yeah.
yeah, my grandfather died. My dad's a recovering guy.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, and yeah, long history, long Russian history of lots of Russian drink,
Yeah.
drug use. Yep. So, and
Does
he knows all that too. So he, you know, so far he is. I mean, you know, kids, not even. I would find it pretty unimaginable for him to
Mm-hmm.
even go in that direction. I mean, he wants to be either a rabbi or an international lawyer, and he's like on the way to do it. Like he aces all his classes. He's
That's
in
amazing.
every extra activity. You know, he takes
Mm-hmm.
engineering 101, drone building, like computer tech, computer program, AIM programming. I mean, we both like science a lot too, so we talk a lot about science and game development. You know,
Mm-hmm.
um, I've bought him a lot of the tools needed, Real Engine, uh,
Mm-hmm.
Blender, stuff you need to make, you know, game characters and game physics and stuff like that. You know,
That's
he's really
really
into that
cool.
stuff right now.
That's great. Did it make you feel concerned, like knowing that it is a genetic history that like you're somehow like predetermined in a way to be this way, and
Yeah,
that you don't
yeah,
have agency?
yeah. It stopped me from having another kid.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I figured I lucked out, and
Mm.
you know, and yeah, and that actually was the part of why his mom and me's relationship, like she wanted to have another one, and
Mm.
I was too afraid that,
I see.
you know, I was like, this one's really good, man, and I don't know, you know.
Yeah. Let's not fuck this up. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
I understand. How do you have like residual? I know a lot of people who are recovering have like a lot of residual anxiety from the years of drug use. Do you have any of that?
Absolutely.
How do
Suffer from
you?
depression, all this stuff. I take medication,
Oh yeah.
especially when I had a spell uh, when my 2 years ago when I had this like 1 year long period where like 9 of my friends died, and
Mhm.
yeah, I sunk into a really big depression over that. You know, and it was not just. I mean, these were people I lived with. You know, they were
Yeah.
friends, um, and it wasn't just like that they were gone and I wasn't going to see them anymore. It was like, what life choices in my life do I make? Do I attract people that would die or commit suicide, OD?
Mm.
You know, like, and so it did a number on me too. You know, and
Yeah.
then so I started feeling like I might die soon,
Yeah.
and that thought wouldn't disappear out of my head.
Hmm.
You know, I kept having the feeling like I was going to die.
Hmm. And were you hesitant at all when you were first prescribed medication because of the drug history?
No, because it's two different things.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
an antidepressant medication. You know, like, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it helps with anxiety and shit like that, and
Hmm.
it's not one and the same. And even if it was, what does it matter? It's better than me feeling like shit all the time. So,
Sure. 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 Yeah.
you know,
I understand that. I had a whole conversation with my girlfriend about that as well when I was starting to get on medication. She's like, "Well, if you feel better, like, who gives a shit? Like,
yeah,
it improves your life, man." I
yeah,
was like, that's fair.
yeah. I was torn up about it because I wanted to be this like healthy, pure guy and everything like that, and
Yeah.
I finally just said fuck it, and then after like 5 months later, when it really is kind of a part of your life and everything like that, is like, and you're like able to like not wake up and want to die or you know, or think you're gonna die or whatever, you start
Mm.
realizing like, yeah, I kind of need to stay on this.
Yeah. Sure. Sure. Did you have any like cultural hang-ups with that at all? Like growing up?
Yeah, my folks are like we're vegetarians, we're really purist health
Hmm.
freaks. My dad's a big rock climber.
Hmm.
They moved from like New York to like the mountains to be in the mountains, and so you know growing up, there was that whole Prozac thing was going on, and they just kind of felt
Yeah.
like they were feeding everyone drugs, and it was bad,
Hmm. Hmm.
and we didn't have any like preservative food in our house,
Wow.
yeah, so like staying over at buddy's house and having Captain Crunch was a pretty exciting thing.
And that's where it all started. No.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, that makes sense. Do you still like feel any sort of stigma or shame surrounding that because of all that residual stuff? No,
I,
you're over it.
yeah, over
Good.
it.
I'm glad. Um, but yeah, do you do therapy as well?
I yeah. Yeah, about, I see somebody about once a month.
Okay, just as like a check-in, like a
Yeah.
doctor's check-in.
Mhm.
Right on. Had you seen someone for more frequently?
I did for a period of time there. Yep, absolutely.
Did you find it helpful?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. If you find the right person,
Yeah.
that's really the important part. You got to find someone who can relate to you. It doesn't. I'm not of the belief 100% it has to be something like an ex-addict,
Yeah.
but it's helpful
Yeah.
to have that. For sure.
Mhm. Mhm.
You're gonna understand you're gonna get the crazy shit that you think.
Yeah. Yeah. That all makes sense. Yeah. I mean, I would imagine that's kind of the idea behind a sponsor with AA, even though
Mhm.
that's not exactly the same. Because one's licensed psychologist and one's just a person that's gone through some stuff,
Right.
which is there's a bit of a difference there.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of a difference. But yeah, I don't have any other questions for you, but if you have anything else you want to say, I will gladly listen.
No, I'm pretty good.
Billy Conahan. Welcome to the show. Sleeping with an end of fly. Enjoy the ride.